And welcome back to the second panel of the Greenville Community Summit, the 2015 Greenville Community Summit. We're taping here on April the 8th at the Greenville Convention Center as part of the Greenville Expo, which is being presented by the Greenville-Pitt County Chamber of Commerce. Nice to have you here. Henry Hinton back as your host for Hour 2. And this hour, we're going to be tackling, well, we've already talked about it some, but now we've got the experts in the field of healthcare. We're going to be talking about our community, Greenville and Pitt County, as a national leader in healthcare, including what it means to us in terms of jobs, well-being, and education. We have a very distinguished panel that I'll introduce to you in a second, but first I want to thank our sponsors once again who made it possible for this to air and for us to put this very important discussion on community issues together. And they include Delcor, Carolina Ice Company, Greenville Utilities, Greenville Toyota, Yadkin Bank, and Pitt Community College. And we're very happy to have as part of this panel this hour the president of Pitt Community College, Dr. Dennis Massey. So we'll introduce him in a second. But our panel will consist of folks from different areas of healthcare, and these are the experts. And again, we're going to hear from them, and then we will allow time at the end of the session for you to come and ask your questions as they pertain to Greenville and healthcare. Very happy to introduce our panel, Dr. Marcus Albernaz, who is a local ENT doctor. And Dr. Albernaz has been on the Vidant Health Board for some time and just got elected as chairman of the Vidant Health Board. To my immediate right, no stranger, our friend Dr. Paul Cunningham, who is the dean of the Brody School of Medicine. To my immediate left, my friend Brian Floyd, who is the president of Vidant Medical Center. And to his left is Dr. Dennis Massey, who is the president of Pitt Community College. We'll do the same format we did last hour. We'll start with Dr. Albernaz, the chairman of the Vidant Health Board, and get his opening comments. And I know you wanted to talk about well-being, Marcus. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service, not only to the community as one of our top leading doctors in town, but also now as the chairman of the Vidant Health Board. Quite a commitment. We appreciate you being here.
Henry, thank you. And thank you for putting this on. This is a community service. Really appreciate it. First of all, I feel completely outgunned here. You've got two presidents and a dean. I'm just a doctor, so, but I'll try to hang.
You're the chairman of the board.
So the notion of well-being, so in the past, healthcare has really been kind of a full court press about helping a sick individual get well. It's not been so much about keeping a population healthy. So the notion of population health really has garnered tremendous attention as the future of healthcare. So it's not about what goes on inside the hospital or even in traditional delivery systems outside the hospital, but it's about individual behavior, diet, exercise, smart choices. So if it's just about a traditional delivery system, that's only 15% of healthcare outcome. Genetics, maybe 20%. Fully 2/3 of your health is the individual behavior, the culture you grew up in, what you do normally. So that's 2/3 of the ballgame in terms of health. Another way to get at this is, where is care actually delivered? And Brian, you've seen this slide. It's little stick figures of percentages representing where care is delivered. So the tiniest little speck of a little toddler is 3%. That's inpatient health care. The next is 16%, which is outpatient hospital health care. The next is more of an adolescent, 34%, which is specialty physician care. And the last 50% or so is primary care by physicians. But this cartoon misses the boat because there's a Paul Bunyan on steroids there that's much bigger than any stick figures, and that's the patient and family themselves delivering their own care, taking the right medications at the right time. So unlike traditional healthcare system, which is really a sick care system, population health is an initiative that focuses attention, especially healthcare provider attention, outside the box of the hospital and more towards health promotion, community partnerships, faith-based organizations, and health education in schools. And it's a lot about health coaches and peer coaches who don't have to have an MD, just good basic health information, good common sense, and a good heart willing to help their neighbors. So how do you do this? There's community partnerships that we talked about, civic organizations. There's information technology, and apps are absolutely critical to this. And right now in Eastern North Carolina, most people have smartphones. And right now there are apps out there that can monitor your heart rhythm, your calorie burn, and a million other things that will keep you healthy. So the new models that are out there, accountable care organizations, clinically integrated networks, bundled payment, there's the whole alphabet soup of ACO, CIN, et cetera. But the basics is to incentivize the system by shifting payment from volume to value. So it's all about incentivizing teamwork and coordination. And in the past, it's been a little bit coordinated. And it's been like a football team with all quarterbacks calling their own shots and doing the best they can with what they have in front of them without necessarily having a coach seeing the whole field. So all this coordination and going from one playbook is going to make a big difference. And there's no more important player on the team than the patient and family themselves. And the good news is that Vidant, in coordination with Brody, is a national leader, national awards on patient and family-centered care. So excellent in engaging the patient. So we're well poised to take that next step in engaging the community more fully. We also have fantastic infrastructure where we're always in the most wired 100 institutions, et cetera. So we're well poised for the future. And I'm blessed, I feel blessed as a physician affiliated with Vidant and Brody and other healthcare providers because we do have all the ingredients here to bake the cake of increased, better care for our population in Eastern North Carolina.
Thank you, Dr. Albanese. Very nicely done. And I would like to point out that you talked about making healthy choices at the beginning and talking about baking a cake at the end. So
It's a healthy cake.
It's a healthy cake, okay. Dr. Paul Cunningham will give his opening comments now. Again, we're talking about Greenville as a national leader in healthcare, jobs, well-being, and education. And we're very fortunate to have a distinguished gentleman like Dr. Paul Cunningham as the dean of the Brody School of Medicine. And I was trying to give you a year off, but you got pulled back in but you were here last year and had some great comments. So we appreciate you being here for a second year, Paul. Thank you for being here. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Sir, Henry, it's always a pleasure to have this intimate conversation in your presence with just 1.4 million Eastern North Carolinians. And first of all, I wanted to acknowledge that the Brody School of Medicine is nationally famous for some of the work that it's already been doing. We have produced over 2,200 physicians since its inception, just about that, and we're populating Eastern North Carolina precisely with the sort of primary care physicians that we need to improve our health. I now want to link that with the crux of the issue, and I think that the last panelist began to talk about the economy and how we could encourage business to come to Eastern North Carolina. Business is interested in a healthy workforce. Business is interested in a highly educated workforce, and some of our panelists will address those things. But we're in the business of creating a healthy workforce. This is why we create primary care doctors. Our primary care doctors are here to ensure that some of the chronic diseases that really affect us predominantly here in the eastern part of the state are corrected so that our workforce is prepared to help business be successful. A healthy workforce is economically viable. A healthy workforce is productive. Many of the diseases you're already aware of: asthma, chronic obstructive lung disease, coronary artery disease, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and a whole long, it's not an endless list. There are probably about 12 diseases that really affect us predominantly in the East. Now, the Brody School of Medicine cannot do this job alone. One of the things that we've understood is that we have a lot of agencies that are all doing good on their own, somewhat siloed. One thing that I can reassure you, however, is that the Brody School of Medicine is working intimately with Vidant Medical Center and Vidant Health to provide the services that are necessary for the region. That affiliated partnership, which has been strong over the last 40 years, is going to be vital to our future. So we want additional partnerships. Obviously, our legislators, and I saw Brian Brown here early on. Our legislative partners will be important. Private industry will be important. We always look for philanthropy. We're going to create a new cancer hospital in Greenville. We're going to need philanthropy from the region. And so our partnerships will need to be broader and more intentional than we've ever had before. Finally, what we will be benchmarked against is not just a practice across the street or a practice to the west of us in Raleigh, but we will be benchmarked nationally based on our cost structure and the quality of care that we provide our patients. And that is our intention. We're going to deliver on cost and quality.
Thank you, Dr. Cunningham. Now we're going to hear from the private part of that partnership, Vidant Medical Center. And of course, you know that Vidant Health is the overall organization that operates 10 hospitals now across eastern North Carolina, emanating here from Greenville, and of course, what used to be Pitt County Memorial Hospital, now Vidant Medical Center, and that's Brian's job. Brian is the president of Vidant Medical Center, so we're very happy to have Brian Floyd here this morning. Brian?
Thank you, Henry. We're very privileged to be here. Let me start by saying thank you to the community and the region. We do what we do because we're here in service to this community. This community has been very supportive of this hospital, the growth of this hospital, its transformation from a county hospital into an asset for all of eastern North Carolina. And what I'd like to do is ping off the comments made earlier about health and wellness as a part of your lifetime continuum. And then the components of how we support the economy is also certainly important and been alluded to earlier today. The medical center here in Greenville really should be about 200 beds if you looked at its size and scope to serve Greenville and Pitt County. It has grown into what is nearly a 1,000-bed hospital as a result of a partnership formed 40 years ago with the Brody School of Medicine and the private physicians who came together at the time and said, we can create an asset that will serve eastern North Carolina, that will produce physicians for the future, and as a byproduct of that, it will improve the health status of eastern North Carolina. And then we believe and know by the statistics that has been a very, very successful public-private partnership formed over the years. We're also very much part of the economy and the lifeblood of eastern North Carolina, both as a provider of health care, but also a provider of education, a provider of the economy through jobs and other businesses that come as a result of the vitality of this healthcare community and the School of Medicine. We produce about $2.5 billion economic benefit to eastern North Carolina through Vidant Medical Center. We have 7,000 employees that work with us, a wage plan of over $500 million a year. We take care of 1,000 patients a day in the medical center, 70% of whom don't live in Greenville. So we know we're a very, very large and one of the nation's largest regional transfer centers for a higher level of care, both because the need is great in eastern North Carolina and because of this partnership and the physicians and others and the expertise that has come into this community, we now provide a level of care that they trust as a resource when they need us. Dr. Albanez alluded to earlier the wellness, which is the real goal. Health care is about caring for your health, and yet the history of healthcare institutions have been very much focused on when the health care fails, we take care of the sickness of a patient. People are concerned at some times about, well, what happens to this great infrastructure here in a world when we're actually focused on not having patients come to a hospital because they're sick. That's why it's so important that we maintain the partnership with the Brody School of Medicine and others, because we know we will be a reference center for all of eastern North Carolina because people will still be sick. There will still be that 15% number that require a higher level of care in the hospital environment. And we've been fortunate to have assembled the resources through the hospital here, which is in the top 1% nationally in size and scope. Less than 1% of hospitals are this size. It also is the physician base that supports us, the expertise of people that have been growing over the years and the infrastructure that's been growing to educate a future workforce, all the way to our regional hospitals that provide local access to care and a transfer center that they can bring patients into that acute care setting when necessary. And we have mobilized resources. We have 3 helicopters and a fleet of ambulances that serve eastern North Carolina by bringing those patients when needed to this resource here in Greenville. As a result of all of that, those 1,000 patients a day, just on the inpatient side that we care for, 60% or more are coming from all of eastern North Carolina, 70% outside of Greenville. That means there's a lot of business, frankly, Henry, and others that come into Greenville as a result of this infrastructure. It gives meaning to the School of Medicine, gives a purpose for work. It gives a purpose, Dr. Massey, to your group, training, technical training skills for people in healthcare. So it really is very much a fabric of the community, a fabric of what eastern North Carolina is all about, and has created a new platform for economic growth right here in the East. And so we see a bright future as we focus our attention and resources into the wellness of the people of eastern North Carolina. You know, Dr. Cunningham's group at the Brody School of Medicine, one reason we're so partnered with them is they produce the future. They produce the physicians in the primary care setting that will make sure communities can be healthy over time, and I'm sure you're going to expand upon that in just a few moments. Thank you for having us here today.
Thank you, Brian. Very insightful comments. And now I'd like to hear from Dr. Dennis Massey, who is president of Pitt Community College. And Dr. Massey, I don't know if you were listening at the last hour, but there were a lot of very positive comments about Pitt Community College and the great job that is going on at our community college, our great community college here in the community, for which you are have a lot of responsibility. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for your sponsorship of the summit today as well. And we'd love to hear your thoughts about healthcare in our community.
Well, can you hear me okay out there? Yeah. Okay. It's really a pleasure to be here today, and especially with this distinguished panel. As you're right, Henry, the broad mission of Pitt Community College is really to provide support for people who are looking for jobs in our community in all sectors. Last year we served 13,000 people in credit programs and another 12,000 in non-credit. So the non-credit might be those employees at Vidant Health who are getting training. The credit programs are more in the traditional degree and certification programs. And by the way, we're one of the strongest in the state in terms of the accreditation success that our students have after they go through our program. They have to take these really rigorous accreditation standards, and 96% of our students pass those accreditation standards quickly. So we feel like we are motivated to serve a broad cross-section of people in this community, and this community is so strongly committed to health and health sciences and healthcare in general. The economic impact of what we do is enormous, but we couldn't do it without the collaboration with a lot of different employers, those in the first group, those in this group, and of course all the people in the community and the region. We have in health sciences about 1,000 students in our credit program, which is not big compared to the total institution, but it's kind of the jewel in the crown of PCC. And it's a selective admissions program, so that means we got many more students who are wanting to get into those programs, but it's competitive to get into them. But that's the way we want it. We want the best people that we have to go into health sciences to take care of you and take care of me. We have some challenges as a community college. Probably the biggest challenge is providing high quality at low cost. Low cost to the students, low cost to the state. But one of the big challenges we have is providing enough salary support to attract and retain our health sciences faculty. That is a real challenge in a community the size of Greenville and Pitt County. But we're working hard at that, and we're making our case to the legislature, the General Assembly, that we can get even more support for that. Another big challenge is the clinical placements. We have so many health sciences programs, from nursing, respiratory therapy, sonography, nuclear medicine, and finding the clinical placements for all these students is quite a job. And that's on top of other clinical placements that health providers have here. So we have to collaborate. We have to work together. I think the end product is we have an engine here of employment in our area, as well as well-being. And we know, as was said at the very beginning, that education and health are really two primary goals for us. And I think we're able to realize those goals. we try to do it not only at the Winterville campus, but all over the community. We're offering courses in Ayden and Grifton and Farmville, north of the river at the Bernstein Center with Brody School of Medicine people. And we know that we have to try harder, but we're always striving to be improvement oriented, and I think we've been able to do that largely because of collaboration.
Thank you, Dr. Massey. Great to have you here. Let me throw the first question out to Dean Cunningham. We hear so much about healthcare these days. We're moving into a new era with regard to healthcare nationwide because of the Affordable Care Act, the problems with Medicaid, the lack of Medicaid, particularly in states that haven't expanded it and are struggling with trying to figure out what to do with it. And of course, all that's having a huge effect on us because of our geography where we live. We do not live in a progressive, dynamic area. Greenville and Pitt County, we think, are dynamic, but when you move out into different areas in different directions, we've got poverty in every direction. We talked about that some last year, as I recall. So it's creating some unique challenges to the to the Brody School of Medicine and Divided. But I've been struck recently when I hear you and Dr. Ballard and others talk about the value of the Brody School of Medicine, not just to us in terms of the economy, but the value of the Brody School of Medicine and what you're doing and the doctors you're turning out to the entire state of North Carolina. And I'd love for you to talk about that.
Absolutely, Henry. And this is a challenge to our leadership. This is something that has become much more focused and intense over the last couple of years, particularly because we've used this word that medicine is in a transformation. What does that really mean? It means that the way that we have done business in the past is not going to be sufficient to sustain us in the future. Our medical school has been absolutely unique. You've already said that we're embedded in a part of the state that doesn't look like the Research Triangle, that doesn't look like Raleigh and Durham and Chapel Hill. It doesn't look like Charlotte, for example. Our unemployment rates in eastern North Carolina lag behind those of the rest of the state. They said the unemployment rate in North Carolina is around 5.7%. I still think it's double digits in Edgecombe County, which is just north of us here. So we have to respond to the local needs, and yet we're in a regulated business of medicine, which has national connotations. So the payment structures that we see here in eastern North Carolina to support all of our practices need to provide the same quality of services that you would obtain in any of the most sophisticated environments in the state, but we have less to deal with. Now, part of the secret sauce of the Brody School of Medicine, one example that I can offer is that our tuition and fees for our medical students has been held very low so that we can actually recruit people from North Carolina who will want to stay in North Carolina and stay in North Carolina providing primary care services. Remember, a primary care physician is really not generating a tremendous amount of cash at the front, in the front office. There are other doctors who are specialists who tend to do that. Nothing wrong with that, but we need more primary care doctors, and the Brody School of Medicine has specialized in creating primary care doctors. So that is why I think understanding our special circumstances and making sure that all of our partnerships are contributing to this outcome, the very positive outcome that we've provided in the past, we must provide in the future, but in this very special disadvantaged environment in Eastern Carolina, it's important. So we need our legislators to support us. We certainly need whatever philanthropic support we can get. And of course, we need to have our physicians working as efficiently as possible. And we need to have a strategic and carefully bound up integrated relationship with our Vidant partner.
Dr. Albanese, how about expanding on that? The relationship between the Brody School of Medicine and Vidant is somewhat unique. It's not unique nationwide, but it is in the state of North Carolina. Many people don't realize that one of the big challenges for a medical school is if you don't own a hospital, or if the hospital doesn't own the medical school, that you have to rely on each other, and that partnership has to work. And that's a challenge. I know as chairman of the board of Vidant, you're dealing with that on a day-to-day basis, but we have a unique relationship between Vidant and Brody because sometimes the needs and the goals are mutually exclusive, but you got to find a way to make it work.
Absolutely, Henry. It all starts with the wonderful value that the private-public partnership brings to the table. You look at the cancer tower that's going up right now as we speak. The groundbreaking was just a few weeks ago. Well, that's being paid for by bonds from Vidant Medical Center, staffed by Brody physicians, and that public-private partnership brings unbelievable value to the state of North Carolina. Nothing against UNC Chapel Hill, but their cancer center is wholly paid for by you, right there in the audience, directly from your taxpayers' monies. So there's a great value that we bring to the state of North Carolina, and it ties back to the fact that we're producing the very product that's needed for all those alphabet soup of models that we talked about into the future. But we are grown increasingly closer together because we're more and more interdependent, and there's a great momentum right now, and I credit Dean Cunningham and Brian to leading that effort to work closer and closer together so we can leverage our mutual strengths for the betterment of Eastern North Carolina.
Let me ask Brian about the Cancer Center, because I attended the groundbreaking Friday a week ago, and people may not realize, if you haven't heard this news, that Vidant is growing again. Last hour we talked about the need for the community to diversify its economy because of the challenges in healthcare. But the truth is, you guys are still growing. I mean, the reality of it is, you're gonna, we saw the Heart Center go up in the Heart Tower, and everybody went, wow, look at that. It's getting ready to happen again because you're getting ready to build a 96-bed cancer tower. Why are you doing that, Brian, and how is that going to affect us, not only economically, but in terms of our well-being in Eastern North Carolina?
Yeah, it's a very exciting time for us to have a project like this, but this project will actually be the largest building project that we've undertaken here since we've been doing all these projects you referenced earlier. So this will actually be our largest facility expansion. We're doing this, though, not just because of continued growth for the sake of growth. This is an investment we're making in the needs of the community. The reality is, when you look at the portfolio of Vidant Medical Center as a hospital, every so many years we have made investments in the next phase of our development because we've been able to amass the resources to match the expertise of physicians and staff with the needs of the community. Cancer is the leading cause of death in Eastern North Carolina. And the reality is the technology that we use to care for those patients is very expensive, takes a lot of expertise, and we know that projects like this are investments we make that bring the physicians together and bring people to Greenville who raise our level of expertise in a given service like cancer care. We've had a long-standing partnership working with the School of Medicine and the Leo Jenkins Cancer Center, but it's not an inpatient facility. And our goal that we have learned from other previous projects are that when we bring the patients together in one location, when they can get their care under one roof, inpatient, outpatient, clinics, and the procedures and treatments, we can do all that in one location here. It raises the level of care that they get. It raises our level of being a good service to those patients. And it brings the provider community together in a way that raises our expertise. So this is one reason for the project, is today we deliver those services in a lot of locations in both our cancer center on the outpatient side with Leo Jenkins and on the inpatient side. We want to bring those fragmented components together in one location. And it also is important that the hospital continues to invest in future facilities. The reality is, over that 40-year span of time, one reason we've had new projects is not only the demand for growth by the region bringing patients to us, but also the fact of the matter is our facilities age over time, and we have to keep up with the need to replace facilities. No one would have ever believed that Pitt County Memorial Hospital would have been more than 2 million square foot plant, and it is today. And so we don't want to wait until that entire plant needs to be replaced, so we have to incrementally do these replacement projects. The Cancer Center will fill that space with the exception of 2 floors, which are actually going to be future expansion for the hospital so that we can replace some of the original parts of the hospital we use today for patient care.
All right, very good. Thank you for that. And Dr. Massey, of course, that means the need is going to be there for more people to be trained. You mentioned respiratory therapists. Now you're going to have the new cancer center, nurses, and Pitt Community College is going to be called on again. How much coordination do you have when something like this is taking place? And we're building a brand new we're essentially building a new hospital again in Greenville with 96 beds. Does Brian pick up the phone and call you and say, hey, you better start training those nurses to do more in cancer? How does that work?
Henry, we have had someone from Vidant on our board of trustees for the last 8 years. We're in close communication on their development. And it's communication really on two fronts. One is the training of people who are already in the workforce. Everybody knows that jobs are changing very quickly, so even those who are in a field have to get retrained to either keep abreast or to move up the ladder in their own profession. The other is the pipeline of people that are being trained from school age on up. And we're very closely connected with Pitt County Schools, with East Carolina University, and every way we can to provide opportunities and structured pathways for these students, even in short-term programs. And to me, that's where the real bright future is for Pitt County and for Eastern North Carolina. We don't have a lot of the liabilities at more populated parts of the state. I mean, there's a lot of assets, but there's also a lot of downsides. We have, I mean, among community colleges, we're the 7th largest in the state. In health sciences, we're the 3rd largest. It's pretty remarkable. And I think the future will even be brighter with Vidant continuing to prosper and with all the other healthcare providers here in the community. I mean, they all need workers, not just at the top level, but at all the worker mid-level and lower level, and those will be good jobs for our community. So I'm looking forward to serving that need.
We've got to get a quick break in. When we come back, we're going to allow you, if you have a question, to go to the microphone, and we'll certainly include your comments. We appreciate everyone being here today. We've had a good participation, good crowd, and we're going to take a short break, and we'll come back with our panel and close things out with their the closing thoughts about health care in our community, but we certainly want to include any of your questions or comments for our distinguished panel as well. We'll take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our discussion about health care in the Greenville and Pitt County community. We've got a great panel here at our second hour of our Greenville Community Summit this morning. Marcus Albernaz, the chairman of the Vidant board, Dr. Albernaz, a local ENT doctor, Dr. Paul Cunningham, the dean of the Brody School of Medicine, Brian Floyd, the president of Vidant Medical Center, and Dr. Dennis Massey, the president of Pitt Community College. And we're having a great discussion. We're going to open this up if anybody has a question or comment for these gentlemen that they'd like to share. But let me go back to Dr. Albernaz and throw a couple more points out to you. This is an engine. The healthcare community is an engine for our part of the state. You know, we talked about earlier, Pitt County is the only county, all the contiguous counties around Pitt County lost population in the last census. And we are driving the economy with health care. And so the question I think on everybody's mind as we move forward is, how sustainable is it? What do you see happening down the road? You've got these you got this discussion about accountable care, managed care, Obamacare. There's a lot of things happening in your industry that could affect us as we move forward. Are you optimistic?
I am optimistic. As I referred to earlier, I really do believe we have all the ingredients to bake the cake of accountable care and the new models into the future. Clearly, we'll have to change with the environment, but ultimately, with the value of the Brody School of Medicine, private practice physicians, and the innovative hospital system, we can definitely thrive. I'm confident about that. A lot of this has to do with working together. And as our good friend Greg Murphy likes to say, we're going to hang together or we're going to hang separately. And I know there's the spirit in this community to work together to become sustainable. We're sustainable now. We have a good head start. We have the ingredients, but we have plenty of work to do for the Brody School of Medicine, private practice physicians, hospital systems, and frankly, the entire community. As I said earlier, a lot of this into the future is going to be about your choices and working together with peer coaches, faith-based efforts, and many other things to make all this very sustainable. And I'll say one more thing. Yes, there is an economic engine to it, but guess what? Automotive industry and many other industries won't come to Eastern North Carolina if there's poor health. So we do have that going for us. We can sustain it. Great healthcare system that will attract automotive manufacturers and many other ventures, because guess what? We have a great coast of North Carolina. The coastal plain is a wonderful place to live, and we just need to sell it.
Dr. Cunningham, I'd like to hear your comments about that also. The Brody School of Medicine is going through some changes right now. We were all in a meeting together this morning talking about, you know, the relationship with Vidant. It's changing a little bit as we move forward. But the other thing that strikes me too, because you work for the state, is that the state can't quite figure out healthcare right now. I mean, the state is just really struggling with the whole question of Medicaid and whether to go with an ACO or MCO, managed care or accountable care. No one knows the answer to that. And I made the comment to you guys that are smarter than the rest of us and understand this medical stuff. You guys need to spend more time in the legislature because they don't have a clue what to do with any of this stuff.
Well, first of all, I need to say that for every dollar that the state invests in our medical school, we return $14 on that investment. So it's a great investment. But our responsibility at the medical school is to go beyond the traditions that we have supported for years, not just here in Greenville, but across the United States. We used to spend much of our efforts and energy equally between education, research, and provision of service. What we have now recognized is that the provision of service is really translated into an economic model. That provision has to be cost effective. And so the focus for us now is to create what I'd like to say is the health and wellness economic zone of Eastern North Carolina, the health and wellness economic zone of Eastern North Carolina. And the underpinning component is the health of our workforce. That requires the same sorts of partnerships that we've been talking about. Brian talked about the partnership that he has had with the Brody School of Medicine. I'd like to also illustrate this by describing how we together would come up with the idea that we need to expand in a cancer program. The cancer has become a chronic disease. 30 years ago, cancer was a death sentence. You got it and you died, guaranteed. With advances in medicine, much out of the academic component, we have made cancer curable in certain circumstances, and actually people prolong their lives for 5, 10, 15, 20 years with that diagnosis. That means that we've had to change the way that we think about cancer and actually build a structure that supports those patients. So cancers of the prostate, lung, breast, and colon, and the bloodstream will be the things that we will be treating together with Vidant. This translates directly into a productive economy.
This would be the time, if anyone has a question, please go to that microphone right there. We're going to ask you, we're going to come to you and answer a question. While we're lining folks up there, Brian, let me ask you that question. You know, I think people would be shocked at the number of people that come to Vidant Medical Center, get taken care of, and then cannot pay their bill. I mean, and that is a huge problem. I mean, when you look at the size of the buildings over there and the staff that you have and all that, it's quite a conundrum. And is it getting better? Is it getting worse? What do you see? Without the expansion of Medicaid, without more Medicaid in the system, how are you going to survive?
Well, that's exactly a good point. The reality is we write off about $140 million a year in what we call charity care, meaning this is unreimbursed care. $140 million a year. We are the one business in the United States that is a very large business that doesn't set price. We are price takers, and we actually give the service away if they can't pay for it. But we've been committed to that, and that's our commitment to the region. One of the things I would say while the community is listening is competitiveness matters, though. So we've been very fortunate for 40 years to have these resources come about here in Greenville. and the communities have come to trust us around eastern North Carolina. But the currency of our ability to be sustainable is not just an economic currency. That's a byproduct of people trusting us, having great experiences in Greenville, not just in our hospital, but they need to have great experiences in Greenville, and the community needs to surround them as a place of health care. So it's one thing to have a community with a very large hospital that creates a lot of economic benefit. The community can't live on a hospital as its economic engine alone. And that hospital can't be sustainable long-term on its own. It does require the supportive systems of the community around it, the people around it. We need our community support to surround what we are as service economy, whether it's education or health care. But this is a great, compelling argument that I've been really pleased to see the city and the county government step in and say, we're here to help. How can we make Greenville a destination for health care?
All right, let's go to the crowd mic again. If you have a question, please come over to the mic and state your name. And you've got the healthcare experts in our community up here. Some of them, we got a lot of them in this community. We got some of the top ones right here, though. Ma'am, go ahead.
Okay, this question is kind of a economic question and a healthcare question. You talked about how we want to move away from sickness care, and I'm assuming that's more towards public health education and promotion, which is one of our degrees at ECU, and it's a degree I'm getting personally, but a lot of the jobs that we get when we get that degree, they're not here in Greenville, they're elsewhere outside of eastern North Carolina, and I'm wondering how we're going to either push private businesses to increase their involvement with that particular job sector, which increases employee health and employee wellness, which keeps them more effective and more productive, or are we going to push that for them, or how long do you think it's going to take for them to catch up?
That's a great question. Who wants to tackle that one? You got it, Marcus?
And I'd like to hear from Dr. Cunningham about the School of Public Health, because as I alluded to earlier in our earlier conversations, boy, oh boy, those kind of professions is what is going to be needed in the future of healthcare, keeping populations healthy. We do sick care really well. Brian can give you illustration after illustration, saving babies with ECMO and unbelievable stuff. But we as a society here in North Carolina need to come together to do population health, and that's exactly what you are doing, and it's going to be needed. There's no way that that is not going to be in demand in East North Carolina.
We're down to about 4 minutes, so Dr. Cunningham, if you would respond to that, and I'd like to hear Dr. Massey also, because he's going to have to provide some folks in that regard.
Health education is clearly one of the keys to the conundrum that we must solve, and East Carolina University has health education programs. It has social services which are going to be integrated, and of course our health sciences campus has nursing, allied health, and dentistry, as well as the medical school, all collaborating in useful ways. The communication between these actively in the community will actually achieve some of the goals that Dr. Albanaz has indicated, and your comments are well taken. Thank you.
You know, Dr. Massey, the question that she asked could deal with a lot of other different industries. We're training a lot of folks that we don't have jobs for in Eastern North Carolina. I know primarily that's not what you guys do, because you guys are very efficient. But she makes a good point. There aren't enough public health jobs in Eastern North Carolina.
Well, we've been in contact with Brody School of Medicine on the medical homes concept, patient navigators, people embedded in the community who can be interpreters and guides for folks, because the health system is very complex. I think that is one level of support. The people that Pitt Community College primarily train are grassroots. They're people in the community, and they're either working with companies or they're working with organizations that see what Dr. Albanaz saw the value of, and they want to put their money where their mouth is. That will take time, especially as we're recovering from a recession and there's not a lot of discretionary income, but I think there will be positive benefit. And answer your point, Henry, I think what we're doing is not just teaching people the skills, but actually helping place people. and connect people with employers. That's the big move that Pitt Community College has done, is connect to careers right directly.
Brian? Brian Floyd? Yeah.
Thank you for the question. I think it is an important one. And what I'll say is what you're seeing today is a healthcare system in transition across the country. But what we know to be true is that the future of healthcare is local, and it will require people focused on the public health aspects and community resources. And so we will be transitioning our investments and resources into those very kind of jobs in the future to take care of care locally.
We are coming to the end of this session. We appreciate the involvement and comments of all these gentlemen. You can see that this community is in good hands in terms of the folks that are in charge of our biggest industry here, which is healthcare in Eastern North Carolina, or actually in Pitt County, and we want to thank all of you for participating today. Dr. Marcus Albernaz, the chairman of the board of Vidant Health, Dr. Paul Cunningham, the dean of the Brody School of Medicine, Brian Floyd, the president of Vidant Medical Center, and Dr. Dennis Massey, the president of Pitt Community College. Let's give them a round of applause and thank them. Terrific stuff, guys. Thank you for what you do and all you do for Eastern North Carolina. We appreciate it very much. All right, we're going to be moving to our third hour of the summit in just a moment, and that is the discussion we're going to have regarding the upcoming bond referendum as voted on by the Greenville City Council. We've got a couple of City Council members coming on with us. The bond advisory chairman, the committee that was the advisory group to the City Council, and Kevin Mulligan also is here, the Public Works Director. So we're going to be talking about you being asked to vote on some bonds coming up in the November election. Very interesting discussion coming up about that. So stand by, and that'll be the next hour here. Again, thanks to these gentlemen, the healthcare session. Great stuff. We appreciate your involvement. And let me thank our sponsors once again, Yadkin Bank, Pitt Community College. Thank you, Dr. Massey. Greenville Toyota, Greenville Utilities, Carolina Ice Company, and Delcor for being part of today's Greenville Community Summit. So we'll take a short break here, and we'll be back with hour 3 and our discussion about the upcoming bond referendum.